Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for these brothers who meet us here on these special Thursdays. Began to look forward to these days, and we ask you to give us the same spirit, the right spirit, the Holy Spirit, to attend this session, as we know you were with us in the last few sessions. And we ask you guide us through the scriptures carefully and prayerfully, and help us to be honest with the scriptures, and just show the same attitude that we've been able to display towards each other, and the same respect we have for your word as we've had all along. So again, be with us this evening and keep out the distractions as far as humanly possible, and keep the line and all things working and evil forces at bay. It's our prayer in the name of Yehoshua. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Right. So now that you've seen what we agree on, then how did you want to proceed in terms of, I know you might want to give an opening statement, and then we take a deep dive in there.
I think we should read the chapters first. That would be the first thing, just to get it into the air.
Right. So I thought that was the objective of the past 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I've read them, but I think that, if we present them in a fashion where we all hear the word, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll make a summary of Daniel 7 and 8, just in the interest of time. Since we've all read them, I would imagine we read them.
Okay. Yeah, I have read them.
Yes.
So, we can, if you want to just dive in, I don't really have an opening statement. I as you all presented it, I was interested to know what was your aim in presenting these two particular chapters as relates to the conversation that we've been having.
We believe it's a good foundation because it shows a number of things, both on earth and in heaven, and where we are in the passage of time. And the last time we spoke, I heard you mentioning 1798, and so there are some connecting points that we have in common. And the areas where we don't have in common, I believe Daniel lays a very beautiful foundation so we can see where we have been and where we are, where we're headed in prophecy.
So 1798, as far as the Lateran Treaty, what you're referring to?
The Lateran Treaty was in 1923.
So 1798 was the birth year of Napoleon.
Yeah, 1929.
The Vatican, the deadly wound. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. 1798 was with Napoleon, was the birth year.
And then the beast from the wilderness coming into power as well. So.
Right. Okay, so this, I believe, it gives us and where do you get that background from, that background knowledge?
I've actually come across it in several studies that I've undertaken. Most of it was through a historical reference. One of them was this website that was entitled World's Last Chance. Are you all familiar with that particular ministry, World's Last Chance?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Are they Seventh-day Adventists?
I'm sorry?
Are they Seventh-day Adventists?
They were former Adventists. They had actually returned more to a Hebraic root. They do still refer to some of Ellen G. White's teachings. Not all of them. They actually observe a lunar Sabbath, and they have some variations I don't necessarily agree with. But it led me from there to do some other additional research, and it came across some more historical references as well, not just that particular religious frame of reference. But, I saw some newspapers where it talked about it. It confirmed the deposing of the Pope and the removing of the temporal power of Rome, and then I went to the Lateran Treaty and saw how Mussolini was, involved in that matter with, I want to say, Pope Pius. No, it wasn't Pope Pius. I forgot what Pope it was.
Yeah, that was it. Pope Pius VI. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was Pope Pius VI. Wow. And so, just kind of lined it up with that, looking at the timing of it according to the 70-week prophecy, as well as the 1,260 years. I believe it's the 1,260 years.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So why don't we start here then? So in Daniel 7, what we will review and what Daniel saw, he was in a vision, and he saw 4 beasts of prey. 4 predatory beasts that came out of a foaming sea. The winds were striving upon the sea, he said. And these were 4 savage beasts. He first saw a lion, and the lion had wings of an eagle, and the wings were plucked, and the man's heart was given to this lion. He stood up on his feet, and then we find after the lion there was a bear, and the bear was raised up, kind of crouched up on one side. One side was higher than the other one, and he had 3 ribs between his teeth. And then after him there was a leopard, another savage beast, and he had 4 heads and 4 wings. And after the leopard, then he saw a beast that he had never seen, an unearthly-looking beast. It had 10 horns. And this beast was in stages, because when he saw the beast, a little horn grew up out of them and destroyed 3 horns and stood in their places. And it was a very ruthless horn power. And it destroyed the saints and sought to change times and laws, and had a specific period of time over which it should rule and govern and persecute and destroy. Then, as this transition was going on, he saw a judgment scenery where thrones were set in place, the Most High came in, and the Son of Man also came and was positioned before him. And the Bible says the judgment was set and the books were opened. And later on in time, we saw that the beast was taken, destroyed. His kingdom was given to the saints of the Most High. And so that's kind of a summary of chapter 7. The Bible gave some descriptions that the horns represent kings or kingdoms. And from there, we can go deeper. In chapter 8, there was another situation there. Daniel actually saw 2 sets of visions. The first vision concerned a he-goat, or a ram and a he-goat. And we find the ram having 2 horns, and a he-goat that was fierce and furious just came without touching the ground and jabbed into this ram and broke his horns and stamped upon him. And when this, in this place of this, so this notable horn, this he-goat had as he was hurtling into the ram. But this horn was broken, and in its place 4 other horns grew up, and one horn became very strong and became exceedingly great. And it started having ambitions against the Most High, against the Messiah, and it persecuted the saints, or wore out the saints, in a similar manner as we saw the little horn in chapter 7. And the sanctuary, the place of his sanctuary was cast down. The Messiah's sanctuary was cast down, and the stars and such were knocked down and trampled on their feet. And these are all symbolic, of course. And then we move on to the point where a question is asked, how long shall these things be? The truth be trampled on their feet? And he said, unto 2,300 days. And so it was interpreted to show what the he-goat and the ram represent. And he spoke of this as a vision regarding the 2,300 days, or evenings and mornings, and as well as the beasts that were seen. I hope I captured most of the detail in chapter 8.
Pretty succinct, yeah, indeed.
So we want to look on the content now. And since you have some of those foundations, we won't delay a whole lot of time to establish things that we're already agreed on. But I wanted just to say in brief that some key components that must be understood, because it will take us throughout. There were 4 winds, and the great sea, the 4 beasts, and the beasts in their succession, the lion, and what happened to this lion with his wings being plucked. What was the significance of that? Why did the wings come in pairs? The bear didn't have 3 wings, the leopard didn't have 5 wings, but the lion had 2 wings, and the bear had 4 wings. Not the bear, the leopard had 4 wings. And what does it mean for a man's heart to be given to this beast? Then, so if there are any comments or thoughts or questions before we move on, then let's acknowledge that here.
I would just, relate this back to the vision in chapter 2 as well, with the
yes, and that certainly is
image that is seen by Nebuchadnezzar in his dream. Daniel, tells him both his dream and the interpretation.
Right. So given that we have this background, I'm sorry.
Well, that's good.
Given that we have this background, I would just say in summary, and if we hold to it, then we don't have to prove the already proven. That the lion kingdom, all the four beasts for that matter, represent kingdom.
Right.
Daniel 7 verse 17 tells us that.
Are you aware that this vision, the first vision that Daniel interprets with Nebuchadnezzar, is a counterfeit of what the temple represents? So, are you all familiar with that matter there, and how the temple is also a metallic representation of a symbolic or prototypical Messiah? Are you all aware of that particular reality?
No, illuminate me in that part. I know the temple has, these are, it has brass, silver, and gold, but
right.
Go ahead and let me see.
Well, the temple is just a symbolic representation of the perfect man. It is symbolic of Jacob. It is symbolic of the Levitical high priest, and it's also symbolic of the King Messiah. When all of the anthropomorphic matters are put together and the rituals associated with the temple and the objective of what the temple is to achieve all symbolizes truly the national reality of Israel. What Israel's national reality is to achieve is to be a messianic nation, to be a priestly kingdom, to be a set-apart people. So what Nebuchadnezzar and what Satan has done through these four beasts is attempt to replicate that and to counterfeit it, and also to bring to bring a force against that. You see what I'm saying? Because each of these kingdoms, as we're well aware, are antagonistic in the most aggressive and physical sense to remove the reality of Israel from the earth in order to establish its dominance. So when we keep that in mind, it actually presents an entirely different dimension to this matter, in that we can see how the fifth kingdom, that of Israel, is to take out these four kingdoms that have risen up to replace the true kingdom of the earth. Does that make sense?
Oh, well, I'm seeing the perspective. The one thing I would say is these kingdoms existed before Israel became a nation. That Babylon, for example. No, not Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon.
This is specifically, I hear what you're saying, but the timing of these visions is not proceeding back to Nimrod. What Daniel saw proceeded from Nebuchadnezzar forward. It didn't go back to Nimrod. Okay.
I'll share with you something that would be very interesting. That's an interesting observation. Why don't you turn with me to Daniel chapter 1. And we'll look at verse 1. Daniel 1, verses 1 and 2. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And Yahweh, the Lord, gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. So here we find out an interesting location is mentioned, the land of Shinar. And that goes all the way back to the days of Nimrod in Genesis chapter 10. There you find that connection. So this kingdom has never...
Undoubtedly. But they had never lost power that entire time. That kingdom that Nimrod had actually lost power after a while. So they hadn't had a successive reign of dominance from Nimrod to Nebuchadnezzar. There had been kingdoms that had risen up and had supplanted their power from that particular time, intermittently from Nimrod to Nebuchadnezzar. And so I point that out. I'm sorry?
Where do you find that historical support? That there was a kingdom that exceeded Babylon?
Well, you can look at the Davidic kingdom. You can look at the Solomonic kingdom. These are preceding kingdoms to that. You see what I'm saying? King Josiah, there had been Israelite kingdoms that had risen up and had become the more dominant force in that region, as opposed to the Babylonian kingdom. Okay, so I specifically, as this prophecy is unfolding, this is related to Jeremiah's 70-year vision, okay? Because this is dealing with a 70-year captivity of Israel in Babylon, after which King Cyrus had them return to the land. So all I'm pointing out is in terms of timing. And I'm not denying that this is a part of the Babylonian empire as it has risen and fallen. But what I am merely pointing out specifically is that this particular captivity that Israel was in was relative to the vision that was given to Nebuchadnezzar about these four beasts or these four kingdoms. And that is where it is pinpointed. It doesn't go back to, I mean, it's a part of that, yes, but it doesn't go back to Nimrod's kingdom specifically. You see what I'm saying? All I'm merely pointing out is that this historically is related from the times of Nebuchadnezzar forward. It doesn't go back to Nimrod forward. You see what I'm saying? It is in the spirit of Nimrod. I well see that, but historically speaking, we're dealing with the particulars as relates to Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, because this is what the vision is specifically in relation to. It's not in relation to Nimrod. It's a part of the Babylon. All the kingdoms of Babylonian, if you want to be specific, you see what I'm saying? They're in the spirit of Nimrod, in the rebel. But historically, this is what we're dealing with. Let's deal with this in historicity, as relates to the historical elements of this particular prophecy and this timing of these four beasts or these four kingdoms. It is from Nebuchadnezzar forward.
I'll challenge your thought with this. Your thinking with this thought. Why do you think there were two wings? What was the purpose of the wings, of the eagle's wings on the bear, on the leopard, the lion rather?
Let's go here. Chapter 7.
Yeah. The lion had wings of an eagle.
The two wings are Nebuchadnezzar and his son, Nebuchadrezzar. It is his son, because after he died, Nebuchadrezzar was the one who received the vision of the writing on the wall. Okay, so the wings are symbolic representations of power. Okay, and so when Nebuchadnezzar had expired and his son Nebuchadrezzar came into power, who Cyrus defeated, those are what those two wings are representative of, because Nebuchadnezzar actually was given a man's heart. After he went and turned into a beast and he realized and he repented, he came to his senses. He became like a man after he had turned into a beast. And then he realized who the Most High was, but he had died, and then his son came back, and his arrogance was just as profound, if not more so, than his father. And so that is the second wing. It is Nebuchadnezzar, and then it is Nebuchadrezzar, which is his son.
So where does Belshazzar?
I'm sorry?
Where does Belshazzar come into the picture?
Let's see. Where is the writing on the wall?
Right. That's chapter 5.
All right. So, that is, I'm sorry, it was Belshazzar. That's his name. Belshazzar, not Nebuchadrezzar. Nebuchadrezzar is another name for Nebuchadnezzar. But Belshazzar, who was Nebuchadnezzar's son.
Really? He's a grandson.
Grandfather. It was his grandfather.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar was his grandfather.
That second one. Yes, indeed. It's his grandfather.
So then there would be three wings.
Well, who was Nebuchadrezzar also in the book? His son?
Jeremiah speaks of Nebuchadrezzar. Mm-hmm. Daniel didn't cite him, but Jeremiah does.
Right. So the power then, as relative to this vision and what Daniel is dealing with, are specifically dealing with these two individuals. Nebuchadnezzar, his grandfather, and Belshazzar, his father, his grandson.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, fair enough. We'll come back to that. But the leopard now, he had four wings. You told us that the wings represent powers, or kings. So
the
what
four wings of the leopard? Yes, indeed. That is when Alexander died, and I'm going to have a question for you in after I answer this one.
Yeah.
The four wings are representative of the four generals, one of them being Antioch Epiphanies, who went into Jerusalem. The kingdom, the Grecian Empire. Repeat
Antioch
that,
is about 100 years after the death of Alexander.
He was a successor of the power of the Grecian Empire. Okay.
Yeah.
All the same. This is part of the Grecian Empire. Okay. And I have to look at the timing of that, because what I understand the timing is that when Alexander died, he was pretty much right in that fold, and he was the general of that region, which included Israel. Okay, there were other regions where other generals had taken power as relates to the Third Empire, or the Grecian Empire. Okay, so what we have to keep in context, these four wings of the leopard are relative to the four empires, or the four generals, that had been broken up as a result of Alexander dying. Okay, so this is what pretty much more of the tradition that I deal with come from and understand, of a Hebraic, even I would say a rabbinic tradition that is dealing with this historicity. And so we have that more of a historical reference to that. Now, on a historical tip, my question to you is, where in the Bible do we see the Grecian Empire on its prowl? Where do we see that? Do you see that in the Scripture?
On its prowl?
Actually fulfilling the prophecies that Daniel spoke of about what the third beast would accomplish. Where do you see that accomplished? Do you see that accomplished in the Scripture at all?
Sure. It's being fulfilled right. It's being fulfilled in our world today. It started way back when Greece came to power through Alexander the Great, and it continued based on Daniel 2. The third kingdom would be a rule over the earth.
I thought the fourth kingdom would rule over the earth.
Well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to that question. I won't lose it, but I'm very curious about. You mentioned the four wings as the four generals. So what are the four heads?
Same thing, symbolic of four, the representation of the headship and the leadership. Let's go back to this. So after this, I was watching, and behold, another beast like a leopard with four wings on its back. The beast had four heads, and it was given dominion. So when you're dealing with the four wings and the four heads, you're dealing with the symbolic representation of power, okay? And so these heads and these wings are a representation of the power that this Grecian Empire will be broken up into. And it also is symbolic of its conquest in what was known of the world at that time in the four directions, okay? Their empire became a little more expansive. Each empire actually became more expansive than the one that preceded.
Right.
And so this four-winged, four-headed Grecian Empire had successive rulers that came after that horn that was broken, that we read in the 8th chapter, which gives us a little more specific insight into what would take place with this third empire, which I will make clear that historically you do not read anything about Greece in the Scripture, what they literally did. You read the prophecy of what they did, but you don't see anything that they had desecrated. Literally, you don't read in Scripture where the abomination of desolation was set up, because it is not included in the 66 books of this.
Yeah, you would read that in the Maccabees. That's
exactly,
where that
and that is the point. And that is the point that I wanted to raise, because while many people look at these books, these apocryphal books, as not inspired or not relative to the Scripture, that alone attests to the veracity of the apocryphal books, because the Maccabees captures exactly what the Grecian Empire did, more specifically under Antioch Epiphanies, not the other three generals, because those three generals were not in the splendid land. They were dealing specifically what they were encountering, because the prophecies were more related to the land that is most splendid. Okay, so this is why Maccabees become so important in our reference, because when you end reading from the book of Micah, the last prophet, or you go into 2nd Chronicles and you end there, you read nothing about Greece. But here's Rome all of a sudden in the book of Matthew. How did Rome get there in the first place? Well, the Maccabees gives you the reference of how they got to that land. But if we don't understand that intertestamental period where they say no prophecy, which is a complete lie that Christianity has espoused and spewed, it lends to true heresy. That is truly heretical, because there was prophecy taking place throughout that entire period. And this is what these apocryphal books are attesting to. And so I bring that up to really refute the claim that has been made, the erroneous claim that has been made of the Apocrypha being not worthy of Scripture, when in fact this whole, 3rd century BC to early 1st century CE writings of these apocryphal books lend to the historicity and to the continual pursuit to return to Torah. That's what these books profess. They go back to the Torah. Everything is Torah-centered. But when we lose sight of that and what the true nature of prophecy is, not to predict anything, but to cause people to return and to understand the word of the Most High, that's what the Apocrypha is doing. And so when we truly see that, it it completely transforms everything that may have been erroneously taught.
Yeah, well, so the Grecian Empire does get focused in the book of Daniel in chapter 11, for example, but I agree. It gets a very detailed review in not the Apocrypha.
But that's not historical.
Not the Apocrypha.
Daniel 11 is not historical. Daniel 11 is merely prophetic in the sense that he is showing a vision of what this beast will do. It is not recording what took place. These are all utterances of, when I say prophetic in this sense, these are foretellings of events. Daniel 11 is a foretelling of events because Daniel hadn't even come out of the captivity. These are still within the time of his captivity in Babel. He wasn't out of Babel because they had returned after that. And then comes this desecration by the Grecians.
Okay, we'll examine that part. So we'll examine that too. But just for your information, Alexander the Great, he died in about 323 BC, and Antioch Epiphanies came into power about 175 BC, well beyond 100 years after Alexander. So my point is to go back to the four wings and the four horns to show that there's something going on with the wings that we need to pay attention to. It cannot be that the four horns and the four wings could not simultaneously represent the same powers. Otherwise, the scriptures would use them in vain. There's a reason why it shows horns and why it shows wings. So since we've done a little scrambling, let's come back to Daniel 7 and look a little more closely. I think I hear some areas where we can do some development jointly. And I do not discount the fact that in the book of Maccabees we have a good working history of Greek life or the Jewish people under Greek dominance. But so we have that in Josephus's works as well. We get a very good rounded history in that. And the Bible gives us more knowledge outside of... And the Bible is not written as a history book. It doesn't detail all of the things that go on in any one kingdom. But only where the people of God has been touched in those kingdoms, then it brings out a specific history. And the history in the Maccabees is very profound, how they, tried to destroy the Jewish people and destroy the order to worship.
I don't mean to, but I really find it crucial to interject that at this time there were no Jewish people, and I'm just being very semantically focused on this here. It is semantic, but these were Judeans, okay? That the Jewish people did not come into existence until much, much later. So when we're referring to the southern kingdom of Israel, you're referring to the kingdom of Yahudah, or the Judeans in the region of Judea. So they were considered Judeans. And I'm just being very specific, but I find that to be pivotal in really understanding the historicity of these people, of our ancestors of ancient.
Would you say they're Israel at that time?
Well, they had come to the they're always Israelites. Every Judean, every Yahudi is an Israelite. He's one of the 12 tribes. The northern tribe, however, had pretty much been taken out. So the kingdom of Israel, the northern tribe, was no more intact, so to speak. They were the lost 10 tribes.
So let me ask this question: the people let's go back to elementary. Who did Babylon take into captivity? Which kingdom?
Judea.
Which of the kingdoms? The northern or the southern kingdom?
The southern, Judea.
Oh, you call them Isaiah?
Judea.
Judea. Yeah. Okay. So then, after Babylon, we have the Medes and the Persians. Who did they have under their thumb?
They released the Judeans to go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Cyrus, when he came in, gave them power to go
the
back.
Medes and the Persians.
Judea.
Okay.
Because let me just say this: Assyria wiped out the northern tribes. So from that point on, you're dealing with the southern kingdom of Judea specifically. After Assyria wiped out the northern tribes, and that was what Isaiah was prophesying of. But pretty much post Isaiah, you're dealing more entirely with the southern kingdom. So everything from Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, you're dealing with the southern kingdom.
Okay. So now, when in the Persian Empire, so after Babylon came the Medes and the Persians, right?
Correct.
And who did they have under their thumb?
The Judeans.
But not the Jews.
They had the tribe of Judah, they had the tribe of Benjamin, and they had the tribe of Levi under their thumb. but they all encompass the region of Judea.
How about the book of Esther? Okay, so then, but you agree then that this is interesting because Esther was a Jewess. We know that. And during the days of Ezra, when they just came back from Babylon, here's how Ezra described them. In Ezra chapter 4, verse 12. And these are the non-factitious, this is Sanballat and his gang. Verse 12. Be it known unto the king.
Ezra 4:12. Give me 1 second, please. I'm sorry. Let me get this real quick. Ezra 4:12. Okay, I'm ready.
This is under the Persian Empire, well before Greece came into view. Verse 12, be it known unto the king that the Jews which came up from thee to us are come unto Jerusalem, building the rebellious and the bad city, and have set up the walls thereof, and joined the foundations. So here, a long time before the Grecian Empire came into being, insofar as ruling the Judeans, they were recognized as Jews.
You do realize you're dealing with a translation, right? You do realize that, right?
Yeah.
Listen, it says, Yadea lehu, la malakah di Yahudaya, di Yahudaya. So the term in Hebrew, or the Aramaic even, is Yehudaya. It is not Jew, okay? So let's just completely, move on, because this is
what does Yehudim?
What we're dealing with. Yehudaya is speaking of this region, these people who are from the region of Yehudaya, okay? What they call Judea in English. The translation is Judea, okay? So what we're dealing with though is a translation that
read chapter 5 verse 1. Let me hear. How does it read in your Bible?
It says 5:1.
Verse 1.
It says V'chat hanavi hagi nabia uz kareha bar odo nabiya el Yehudaya.
I don't know what that means.
So I'm reading it in Hebrew first. It says Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, son of Edo. The prophets prophesied to the Yahudim who were in Judea and in Jerusalem in the name of the Elohim of Israel about them. So again, you're dealing with mistranslation, because the word Yahudim, exactly, which means those of the tribe of Yahudah.
Yes.
There is no Jewish. You have to understand the word Jew is a corruption.
Right.
It is a corrupted word given by particularly Hitler to describe these bastard Jews who were not the indigenous people.
All right. We won't stumble over that.
I don't want to be completely pinpoint, but this is what we have to understand. When we're dealing with the word Jew, much like Jesus, much like Jehovah, is an erroneous word. It doesn't exist in Hebrew, okay? It does not exist. The letter J does not exist in Latin, in Greek.
I agree.
So when we're using these words, they're misleading. That's what my point is. You're misleading yourself when you're speaking these words and these names, because they don't exist. It's a corruption.
Yeah, I agree that the names, and we're using Latinized words, and that's how we end up with Jehovah and Jesus. But you would agree that it's not Yehudim and Yehuda are two separate descriptors. One is a geographic territory, Yehuda, and the Yehudim are the people of Yehuda.
No, Yehuda is even a proper name, because Yehuda comes from the particular son of Yaakov, who is Israel, who is Yahuda. His name is Yahuda. That is his name. So
is there a land of Yehuda?
There is a land of Yehuda because that is the land that the people of Yehuda occupy. People are named after the land, and the land is named after a people.
Okay.
This is why we have to make these connections.
Yeah. I don't know that we're going to get any fruit out of going down that path. So we agree that we are dealing with a Latinized translation here, or Romanized translation in some of these words. So, I mean, if you feel that we should use a different word for the Jews,
then you can use Jews. You can use it. I just wanted to clarify. That's all I was doing.
Yeah, but
you can use the term for convention's sake. But I was just making clear that this is the point is that it is an erroneous term, but I wanted to clarify. We can use it for convention. You know what I'm saying? I understand what you're talking about. Like, you even use the word God or Lord. I understand who you're referring to, but I understand that is a corrupted term. So just making it clear.
All right. So I received that, and that's fine. But my point was to establish that the term or terminology was well known before the time of the Grecian Empire. But that aside, we come back to the wings. So let's get in Daniel 7 and really take maybe a closer focus, because there's some important developments that we will lose if we don't connect the wings properly. So, and going back to Daniel 7, verse 1 here, well, we know what it says in verse 1. We'll take verses 3 and 4. And the four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given it. The wings were plucked. They were pulled off. He saw all of this. And this is not necessarily successive, but he saw what is happening. He said, I saw the wings were plucked. I saw that the beast was lifted up from the earth. Saw that a man's heart was given to him, or given to it. So the man's heart shows not just a human heart, but a new heart. This is what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He had a conversion experience. He had a heart a heart of flesh, that the Spirit of God could now communicate with. Before that, he had a beast heart, a wild heart, an unconverted heart. So that's the first thing to know. Correct. Yeah, go ahead.
I said we've established that, correct.
Good. So the next thing then is to see that the wings were plucked. So the plucking of the wings shows that this kingdom that is represented by the lion is going to go off the stage of history. The wings really represent time period. And I will show you that in two verses. Some people think the wings represent speed. Others think they represent kings. The wings cannot represent kings because, Belshazzar was a grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. So the lion should have 3 wings from that point then. But it didn't happen that way. So he had 2 wings, and the wings were plucked. It goes on. Immediately, verse 5 says, and behold, another beast, the second like to bear, and it raised itself up on the one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Why 3 ribs and not 3 wings? See, something is happening that's keeping time. That's what I wanted to bring out this point. So, although the kingdom of Babylon is the first world empire, because by virtue of imperialism, it was not the first kingdom of mankind. This image is not the image only, but this vision is to show the succession of kingdoms. Most times people say that there are 4 world empires and we're waiting for the 5th world empire. And that's not entirely accurate. And that can be proven from Daniel 2 as well. But coming back, just staying right here, the focus in chapter 7, you'll see the 3 ribs. So from 2 wings to 3 ribs.
So what are the 3 ribs?
I'm coming to that in just a second.
Okay.
After I answer this part in verse 8. Not verse 8, but verse 7. Verse 6. Verse 6 says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Do you notice something? 2 wings, 3 ribs, 4 wings. There's a counting process that's going on. God is taking into consideration the flight of time. And so the kingdom of Babylon, there was a kingdom before Babylon that came on, that was on this earth. Adam's kingdom, or the pre-diluvian, or what we call antediluvian world. That was a kingdom of many hundreds of years, over 1,000 years, nearly 1,600 years of inhabitants. So the Bible doesn't give us any description of that in Daniel in any level of detail more than keeping the numerical count, the order of kingdoms. As we will get to that order in the book of Revelation, where it says there are 7 kings and 5 are fallen, and we have to go back and accumulate and account for these kings. And the Bible is very clear on this. So the two wings represent the second in the order of kingdoms. But the beast itself, being a savage, flesh shredder, it shows a kingdom that came into existence by force, through warfare, through subjugating others. That's not how Adam's kingdom came in. So it was not represented as one of these savage beasts. Then we come to the bear. The bear is another savage beast. And so it's the second beast, but the three ribs shows time period number 3. It's keeping time that this is the third kingdom from Adam, or creation, but the second world empire being the second beast. So we come now to the leopard. And while the leopard is the third beast of prey, the number 4 comes on with it, and in 2 forms. To show that God is keeping track of time, he could have used the 4 wings to represent, without putting 4 heads on this beast. But not only did he put 4 wings, but the beast had 4 heads, to show that the heads are not not kings or kingdoms, and the wings are also kings and kingdoms. That would be extremely confusing, especially given the fact that these wings would have had, and heads would have had to be existing simultaneously. They had to be contemporaneous with each other. And Antioch Epiphanies came nearly 200 years after Alexander the Great. So that's important.
So didn't you just say earlier, though, that the first kingdom did not necessarily mean it was a successive rule? If I'm not mistaken, you talked about when this first wing was plucked and the second wing was plucked, it wasn't necessarily a successive thing. Did I hear that correctly, or am I mistaken when you said that?
No, you're mistaken. What I'm saying, the events that are happening are not necessarily in succession what was happening in verse 1.
Okay. That's the exact
and I'll
point
show you
that I'm
why.
making.
But the wings have to be existing. I mean, the event can occur. Daniel can report what he saw. But these events must happen in their own capsule. We can't have one wing here and one wing over there.
And let me respond, if I may.
Go ahead.
That very well may be a historical reference that you're making to the wings, the ribs, and the other wings, the 2, 3, 4. But here's a question: Who were the kings of the Medo-Persia Empire? Who were the kings of that empire before they were overthrown by the Babylonians? What are the kings' names, and how many were there?
There were 2 kings.
There were 2?
There was Cyrus, and there was Darius, or Darius.
Is there another one by the name of Ahasuerus also in there?
I haven't seen that one in the scriptures.
Or maybe Xerxes, some may call him? Is Xerxes also
Xerxes came quite some time after.
Okay, so he was still in part of the Medo-Persian Empire before the Babylonians deposed them, correct?
No, Xerxes came after. No, remember, the Babylonians were destroyed by the Medes and the Persians.
I'm sorry, before Greece came and destroyed the Medo-Persian Empire, did Xerxes have a rule? Was there not Cyrus? Was there not Xerxes or Ahasuerus and Darius? So would that account for the 3 ribs?
No, because
that would not.
Let's see why. Remember, the ribs are in the mouth of the bear. The bear has them under his control.
That doesn't necessarily mean that. That necessarily does not mean that.
A bear, when a lion has food between its teeth, who is in control?
The food in the teeth. Okay.
If a lion has you in its jaws, who is in control?
You have to. Okay. The food in the jaw is also understood as the nourishment, or that which gives it even its power. So you can look at it in several different ways, because when you eat, you are empowered. So just because something is in its mouth, just like when the word is in Yah's mouth, or in the mouth of the prophet, that gives them their power. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it is subject to them. It means that it is something that is empowering them. So when you look at it, you want to look at it from all perspectives. And so what I propose is that these 3 ribs, okay, just like Hawa was taken from the rib of Adam, symbolically, these 3 ribs also symbolize a presence, a reality, a power, okay, and even stability to provide, because a rib symbolizes structure and stability and protection, okay? So when you're looking at these 3 ribs, what I'm proposing is that the two wings of the lion, again, are Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. The three ribs are King Cyrus, King Xerxes, or King Ahasuerus, and King Darius. And I actually just looked up something about the four wings of this fourth beast that was most terrifying. It says ancient historians tell us that Alexander the Great's four generals divided his empire and assumed control of different parts. His four generals were Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. So
were those
these are immediately. I'm sorry?
Were those successive generals or contemporary?
They were with him contemporarily, but when he did transition, these generals stepped into power. Lysimachus received grace. Yes, and these are the four wings. This is the point I'm making. In most of Asia Minor, Cassander obtained Macedonia and Greece. Ptolemy was given Egypt, Palestine, Cilicia, Petra, and Cyprus, while Seleucus controlled the rest of Asia, Syria, Babylon, Persia, and India. So the timing of these people.
Agree with that.
Now the deep thing, Alexander was succeeded by Antiochus the First. Antiochus Epiphanes was the fourth. Okay, so Seleucus is the great-great-great-grandfather of Antiochus Epiphanes, who actually was this Grecian empire, as I was saying, was in power this entire time, though. So this is a continuum of power for these Grecian empires when you start to see the fulfillment of the latter parts of Daniel 9 talking about the abomination of desolation being set up in the temple. That is at a much later time, because what we're initially reading in Daniel 8 is what is happening when that horn is broken off, and then these four horns come out into its stead, and then eventually we get to Daniel 9 where Antiochus Epiphanes, who is Antiochus the Fourth, comes into power.
We hope to support unchallenged historical and biblical data to show that this could not be Antiochus Epiphanes. It could not be.
Not initially, no, but his great-great-great-great-grandfather was the one who rose to power after Alexander. That's the point I'm making. Antiochus Epiphanes came some generations later, but he had come from a line of a slave who had risen to power that became a general for Alexander.
But follow now, because we are talking about four. You mentioned the four generals: Seleucus, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, Cassander, and then so you have the Seleucid dynasty and the Ptolemaic dynasties, and in succession. You mean after, Ptolemy, you're going to have all the Ptolemies going beneath, the Seleucids going all the way down, you have all of those. So you're looking at a string now, a very large number, well beyond four. The Bible allows only for four. So there's a reason why it plays four, and we will see that later on, too, in Daniel 8. But when we start moving the wings to become kings, then what do we make of the heads?
Does not the scripture also speak of the successive empires to come? Okay, so while it may not give you all of the intimate details of it, it is still telling you of the successive nature of these beasts that will come to power. So while the third beast is still in power, we may not get all the intimate details of every descendant of Seleucus the First, but we will see the residue and outcome of that in Daniel 9. And that is Daniel 9 specifically speaking of Antiochus Epiphanes. And we can see that in the book of Maccabees, where that is manifest.
Well,
the scripture may not give you every specific detail of every specific leader or general that comes in the stead of Alexander, but it lets you know that these powers will be a continuum until Rome comes and eliminates the Grecian presence.
Okay, so hold that thought, because I want to share with you something and give thought that we're giving a lot of credit to Antiochus Epiphanes that he doesn't earn from the Creator. He is not the one, in as much as Greece has been greatly responsible for desecrating the sanctuary, the sanctuary at Jerusalem, the temple at Jerusalem. That is not the power that's brought forth into Daniel 8 that's doing this work. And I'll show, but we don't want to jump the gun. So I'll just put this out there for consideration. So we have two wings on the lion. We have three ribs on the bear. And they said to him, "Arise, devour much flesh." So we see the time period in which this bear existed. was one of great wars, these Punic Wars as they're called. Then we move to this third animal, the leopard. The leopard had 4 wings and 4 heads.
Greece? Are you sure the Punic Wars were with Greece? Those with the Carthaginians. Wasn't the Punic Wars with the Carthaginians and the Romans?
Yes, that was with Rome. So it shows us, the name notwithstanding, Alexander's empire was one of great conquest.
But he wasn't involved in the Punic Wars.
Before that, we had the Medo-Persians. So after Babylon was taken by the Medes and the Persians, not a shot was fired, the king was slain. Then we find his entire kingdom was assumed by this foreign entity. And
okay,
it was.
Let me interrupt one more time. Are you saying Alexander was a part of the Punic Wars?
No, I said discount the Punic.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Punitive war. Yeah.
Okay.
Just discount the terminology of Punic. You're correct with the Carthage. But during the reign of the Persian Empire, we find the expansionary reach of these powers. So while Babylon was a large power, it was not a consuming power that was assuming all the kingdoms around it. But when we came to the Medes and the Persians, they started taking on more territory. We came to the Greeks, and they took on even greater territory. And the Romans, and even they went further and took on greater territory. So we see that it was a time of aggressive land grabbing and taking over other people's territories. So when it says, arise, devour much flesh, it shows that this was a time of conquest, when nations were being subjugated by other nations, by one other nation, this nation of the Medes and the Persians. Then, so we're seeing that's marker number 3. When you go back to Daniel 2, you see the head of gold, which is the kingdom of Babylon. But before the plains of Dura, in the land of Shinar, there existed a kingdom of man, the kingdom of Adam, one that was not ruled by one which did not come to power by the force of arms. That's why you'll see that the Creator himself is going to restore that kingdom. So the Bible is showing you the succession from Adam's kingdom all the way down to when that kingdom is restored. That's brought out in Daniel chapter 2. So in 2:44 it says, in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. Because that was established in Eden, it will be restored.
So do you account the Assyrian and the Egyptian kingdoms? Do you account for those? Do you account for, let's see, what else is in between there?
Yes, the Bible does
the
make
Hittite kingdoms. Do you account for those kingdoms as well?
Yeah.
And Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, because if you look, even in like Genesis, what is the War of the Kings? Genesis, maybe 18, maybe 19, around there, 16, 17. No, it's like 15, 16.
The King of Nations and Chaldemaner and his group, and the King of Og.
Right. And you have Amraphel. Now, interestingly, Amraphel, there's another book that equates Amraphel with Nimrod.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was the king of Shinar, so they actually make them I don't want to say synonymous because it's not the same name, but they actually identify the king Amraphel with the king of Nimrod, who some even call Ninus.
Okay, I'd have to look on that history, but that wouldn't change anything here. We're talking about world empires. We're not talking about these satellite kingdoms. We're talking about
Assyria was a world empire, though. Assyria had a global empire. Egypt had a world empire.
Yes, but the reason why Assyria did not get as much focus, in as much as it's addressed in prophecy, is because they were not. The people of Israel were not. They were not enslaved by this country. The 10-tribe kingdom. The 10-tribe kingdom. I'm talking about the people of Israel, the true worshipers, where the temple was. The temple never was compromised, and its people driven into Assyria. The rebels who went north, they were taken by Assyria, but Assyria did not take over the house of true worship. So Babylon took it over. Greece took it over, Medes and Persians, all the way down to Rome. So this is the line that the Bible is presenting. Where the temple, where the holy sanctuary traveled, it's a land of it's the line of true worship, and we have to trace it down. Assyria took over the kingdom of the apostate Hebrews, the 10 tribes.
So how can you relate that to Babylon when they weren't even in a land and they were they were
Babylon took over. Babylon tore down Jerusalem and took all the sacred vessels and the center
if you're going
of
back
worship.
to Nimrod, because you're going back to Nimrod, because you talked about Adam and you went to Nimrod, and this is the point I'm making. If Nimrod, his kingdom, Babylon, was a world power, and they had pretty much, absorbed all the different other nations into their kingdom, Abraham, as we know, was the only quote-unquote temple standing. You see what I'm saying? As the true temple that Yah desires to dwell in. And so to not include Assyria as a world power is almost like, being negligent to what the reality is, and that, Yah's people are his true temple. Now, he did choose Jerusalem to be the place where that is standing. I'm just trying to use some reason here and understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to refute you, but I'm just thinking in that if we include Nimrod's kingdom, we have to include Assyria because it's the same principle, because they took out an entire people. They were being rebellious, but they were still covenanted. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, let's do something. Let's do just to answer that and move on. Let's look in Genesis chapter 10 and round about verse 11.
All right.
In fact, we'll take verses 10 and 11, and you'll see from 8. Yeah, 8 is a good starting point. Genesis 10, because this kind of lays the foundation. 8 through 11. And Cush, Genesis 10, beginning at verse 8. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh, wherefore it is said even Nimrod, the mighty hunter, before or against Yahweh. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Out of that land, Shinar, went forth Ashur, that's Assyria, and builded Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, and the city of Rehoboth and Calah, and so on. So here, Nimrod's kingdom is the birth center for Assyria.
Right.
It cradled Assyria. So, and again, we're not the ones writing this prophecy. The Creator himself is doing this. So God is not oblivious to the existence of the Assyrian kingdom. But the focus was not to be given on them because Babylon is the cradle of Assyria. And if you see right now in Iraq, what are the Islamic State people doing? They're destroying their Syrian relics. Oh, it's the same land. All right, so going up to Daniel 7, an interesting thing develops here in verse 5. Another beast, we covered that beast already. So this is, and I just want to bring one thing out here, is that the beast is the Medes and the Persians, and I think we agree with this. The bear is the Medes and the Persians. I don't think I need to prove that further, which I can.
No, we know who they are, right.
Okay, good. So now 6, you like this one, the Grecians. After this I beheld another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads. Dominion was given to it. So we have wings and heads. They're discrete. They're different. Then we see down here, and I really wanted us to see this because this is powerful. The Grecian Empire came and did its work, and it ended. Watch closely. This is extremely important. Then verse 7 introduces something else. After this, meaning after the Grecian Empire, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. Now, we have passed Greece. A 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Let me just jump down to verse 17 to qualify something that we all agree on. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. Go on. And the saints, then verse 23. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth. So the beasts are kings and kingdoms in succession. It's important. The 4th beast is the 4th kingdom. Therefore, each beast represents a kingdom. Huh?
Right. Which kingdom is that? Who is the 4th kingdom?
That's Rome.
Okay. I agree.
So I want to go back now to show where Artaxerxes and Epiphanes and all the others exist, and where Rome comes into play. So in verse 7 again, I purposely went down to 17 because we need to qualify that we're dealing with kingdoms here and not just little puppet kings. After this, verse 7, I saw that's after the Grecian Empire, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, had great iron teeth, and we read that. This is the kingdom of Rome. The metal, iron is distinctive for Rome in Daniel 2. Verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. We see this as the rise of the papacy, and I believe you hold to that as well. Here is an interesting thing. Greece is off the chart of history, and we're going to see a development affecting the temple of Yahweh and the people of Yahweh under the Roman Empire, the fourth beast.
So what time frame do you relate that to? Like what time frame are you relating this here?
From the
like
time
from
about 31 BC all the way down to 1798, and all the way down to our times.
Okay.
So from the time
was the temple destroyed prior to that?
What was that?
Was the temple destroyed prior to that particular time frame, though?
Yes, the temple was desecrated, but not destroyed. It was desecrated.
Okay.
The temple was destroyed in 70 AD, but never since it was destroyed by the Babylonians in 587, or from 606, between 606 and 587, depending on the historical sources, BC.
Right.
Then it was never destroyed after it was rebuilt. It was desecrated. That's important to note.
Right.
All right.
I agree.
Okay. So we go on now.
So when does the abomination of desolation come into the picture?
We're going to get to that. That's where it gets sweet. That's really the sugar on it. So we're in chapter 7, verse 9 now. I beheld. So we saw where one horn subjugated the others, 3. So now he says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like a fire flame, and his wheels as a burning fire. A fire stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. This part of the vision suddenly moved up to heaven. In heaven, in the throne room, in the sanctuary, in heaven, we see something happening. We see a sanctuary here, and Revelation chapters 4 and 5 really makes this plain for us. That this event that we're looking on in chapter 9, in verse 9 rather, is going on in the sanctuary above, because it tells us here in verse 9, I beheld till thrones were cast down or set in place. The Ancient of Days sat, not on earth, but in heaven. Describes him, and then talks about in verse 9, they came forth before him thousands, the retinue of holy angels. Then it says a judgment was set, and the books were opened. Sometime during the career of the second phase of this beast is when this judgment would go on in heaven. It's not a judgment on earth. This is where Seventh-day Adventists didn't fully understand what they had their hands on. And they were expecting a judgment to occur on earth. But if they had understood this closely, they'd see that this judgment was to go on in heaven.
Give me a precedent for that. Give me a precedent for that. Give me a scriptural precedent for what you're saying. Where is the precedent for that established?
For establishing what? Which part?
The precedent of this heavenly judgment that's to take place. Where do we see that elsewhere?
Oh, Enoch. Enoch mentioned it before. Whenever people are judging earth, they're judging heaven before.
So, this vision. You're saying this is a heavenly vision that Daniel is receiving. This is not anything relative to earth at all. It is specifically relative only to the transcendent dimension of the Most High. This is what you're saying, correct?
Yes, with one caveat, that the result of the judgment will be felt on earth. So we are not finished with the reading. It tells us how it's happening. There's a judicial process that's going on. We see thrones. We see people take their places. A judgment is in session. All the holy angels come into play. They came as witnesses. John gives us a broader view of this in chapters 4 and 5, Revelation. But we didn't want to consume our...
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
When you say the angels, are you familiar with what Malachi chapter 2 and verse... Let me find it before I quote it. 7. Malachi 2:7 says.
That's exactly where I am.
Because what I think you're greatly confusing two things. I think you're confusing the antere, the earthly reality of what the Most High is attempting to establish through His people, who He considers, for those who carry out His will, and more specifically the Levitical priesthood, His angels. Okay, so I'm not denying the reality that there are heavenly authorities. However,
is this a Malachim?
I'm sorry?
Finish your thought, and I'll ask my question.
Yes, in Malachi, the book of Malachi 2:7.
No, I was asking if this is a Malachim in Daniel.
Malachim, yes, indeed. But Malachim also relates to the priesthood, okay? Just as the Elohim relate to the house of judgment, which is known as the Sanhedrin, okay? So a lot of times, and I can say that with Psalm 82, okay? With Psalm 82 lets you know you are Elohim and all of you are sons of the Most High. And so
yeah, you die like men.
Exactly. But however, He has invested in us this kingdom power, okay? This is where we're known as emissaries or plenipotentiaries or envoys, okay, to reconcile. Our initial purpose is to reconcile man back to the Most High. And I say that to say this, because my point that I want to just get to clearly, and this has been the whole back and forth of our conversation, is that this book is wanting to establish a reality on earth. The Father's realm is well situated. It has never even been threatened. Okay?
No?
Hillel, or Lucifer as we know him, was not a threat. He wasn't a threat to the Most High because the Most High created him. He just bounced him. Get out. You don't have a place here anymore.
It was a threat to the order of heaven.
I'm sorry?
It was a threat to the order of heaven.
Not as we know of a threat to the point where he would usurp it. He wasn't a threat to the throne whatsoever. You know,
maybe.
He couldn't jeopardize. There was no jeopardy at stake for the Most High's throne whatsoever. He's seated. He's the Almighty. You know what I'm saying? Hillel is still a pawn in the Most High's game. You know, He's using him even now to assist the weak and tares. He is sovereign. And so I say that to say the Father is strictly focusing on establishing His kingdom on earth. So what we're reading are matters relative to the earth, and I say that to say this because when the vision on the Mount of Sinai or Sinai was given, this was a heavenly vision on earth. Okay, so some of these things we have to relate to the temple. Sinai was an allusion to the temple in that there were 3 dimensions. There was the base of it, which is the courtyard. There was a place where the elders could go up, which is the holy place. And then there was a place where Moses could only go, which is the most holy place. So these are all allusions to the temple. So the Father is always getting us to understand the dynamics of a temple, which truly is us, our mind, our head, our torso, and our outer part. However, these are all to get us to understand these are earthly matters. We're not leaving this planet, man. I don't know what the argument is, honestly, and besides being a nominal Christian thought that we're going to go to some other dimension, you know, and exist. Because scripturally, again, Scripture, it causes us to understand that His kingdom will come on earth as it already is established in heaven. Amen. So the visions that are even being seen are visions. That's what they are. They're visions. Okay, they're visions. There are even theophanies. Okay, where the manifest presence comes to earth. And I just want to really be clear that a lot of the things that are being mentioned as Christian doctrine have nothing to do with Hebraic understanding whatsoever, and the idioms and the understanding that Israel was trying to convey to the people. And it has no base in Scripture. It really does not have a base in Scripture for us to be going to some other dimension.
Okay, you gave us Malachi 2, verse 7.
2:7.
For the priest.
In order to understand, just like when you read in Revelation 1, The 7 stars are the 7 messengers of the 7 assemblies. The 7 lampstands are the 7 assemblies. They're not talking about extraterrestrial creatures. It's not talking about extraterrestrial creatures. It's talking about the servants of the Most High, those who do His will. So the priest, the list of a priest, going back to Malachi 2:7 real quick, the list of a priest should guard knowledge, and they seek the Torah from his mouth. For he is the angel, some would say. He is the messenger, this one says, of Yah of hosts. But that word is malach, or malach. Malach. He is the malach. He is the mouthpiece. He is the one who brings the word.
But he's not the malachim.
The malachim is plural of like the Ophanim, the Seraphim, the Gilgalim. You see what I'm saying? The Cherubim. Those are a completely different order that Yah only reveals to the man. They carry out the message to the man, but man carries out the message of Yah on earth. So what is happening is that Yah is giving his word to his servant to bring to this earth. But he's showing him the order. So when Moses saw the vision of the temple, and I'm just using these as points of reference, he showed him what he should establish on earth. Not that he's going to go there. He's showing it so that you can understand this is the order that you are to set up here in this existence, in this manifestation.
Let's turn to the book of Hebrews, chapter 8. I just want to anchor something to show that there's more to it than, just saying that it's something that should happen purely here. Here, Hebrews chapter 8, and you'll know that chapter 7 talked about Melchizedek, greatly, and the high priest, the priesthood that he carried out. But chapter 8 says, now of the things which we have spoken, this is a sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, meaning the original tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat to offer. For if he were in earth, I want to get down to the part with Moses, verse 5. Who serve in the example and the shadow. No, I got to read 4 to get the sense of 5. Mm-hmm. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. So he's not on earth. He's not this high priest, this temple that we're learning about in Hebrews. It originates up there. So he goes on in verse 5. Who, Yeshua, the high priest, who serve unto the example, that's the earthly priest, right, that's referring who to serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses, or Moshe, was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern, the example, the design, the blueprint, according to the pattern showed unto thee in the mount. The pattern was that was the real deal.
What verse did
what
you
we
read?
have.
He just read verse 5.
Okay.
Right. Read it. Let me hear it in your version.
Verse 5.
What? Yeah.
It says, those who minister for a type and foreshadows of those things that are in heaven, as was said to Moshe while he was making the tabernacle. See, and make everything according to the type that was shown to you in the mountain. See, in the Aramaic, it doesn't say heaven, plural. It says heaven. And that might be very key.
Mine says, who serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly. So what I understand this to mean, if I may interject real quick, this is Yahushua has returned to the place from which he came, okay, in spirit. His spirit and his presence has returned to the place from where he came. And we can read this in John 17, where he says, bring me back to the former glory that I had. So Yahushua was dispatched to come to earth, okay? As we know, it is Mikael. We have said this, right? Yahushua is Mikael pre-incarnate.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So as the prince, he has always been at his father's right hand. He has always carried out his father's will perfectly. So he was restored back to that condition, okay, a position, to minister in the temple as he was assigned to do. However, he has left the responsibility to his bride, to his body, to carry out the duties on earth now that he has restored the original pattern to earth.
Amen.
Because the pattern was not to have a physical temple to make sacrifices for sin and for guilt. Now, we can make free will offerings, but we weren't supposed to do anything as a result of sin and guilt. That wasn't the pattern. It is better to be obedient than to sacrifice. So this is what we have to understand. And so I say that to say this. Yahushua has given us the responsibility of carrying forward the will of the Father now that he has reconciled everything back to the Father and subjected everything under his feet, which ultimately is under our feet now because he has restored us to the rightful position of power in him.
I don't see that.
I'm sorry?
You're saying things that will convene in 1 Corinthians 15, but those haven't come to life as yet. They're still yet future, where he still surrender all things back to the Father.
It is the bride's responsibility to carry that forward.
But that's not what Hebrews is saying, though, Brother Mike.
The point I'm making is this, though. What we're reading here, this tent that you're talking about, this heavenly tent, this greatness in the heaven, is for that particular aspect. It is not to what is going on in heaven is supposed to be a reflection on earth, okay? That does not mean that we have to go to heaven to learn how to do it. It is not to say, Deuteronomy 30, who shall ascend to heaven and bring it down for us to do it? Who shall go across the waters and bring it back to us to cause us to hear it and do it? No, it is very near you and in your mouth and in your heart so that you do it. We have to understand he has given us this responsibility to create this reality here on earth. The reason it does not happen is because the bride has not taken the responsibility to cleanse herself and to prepare the kingdom for the Most High. That is
this passage is saying the very opposite, though.
I'm sorry?
This passage is saying the very opposite.
This passage is saying the very opposite.
Let's look at it with a little more detail. In chapter 8, let's go back to verse 1, Hebrews.
And we're going to have to wrap up in a little bit. I'm going to have to probably give you all about 10, 15 more because I know my wife has been with the children all day.
Yeah.
She's getting tired.
That's fine. That's fine. We can do that. Now, of the things which we have spoken, this is the summary. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. The first thing, that the high priesthood has moved from earth to heaven. We have that high priest. He's the minister of the sanctuary in heaven and of the true tabernacle in heaven. I'm putting that in heaven there, which the Lord pitched and not man in heaven. There is a sanctuary in heaven. So when we see Daniel... Huh?
I said undoubtedly.
Okay. So there's a function for that sanctuary, which is a cleansing place for sin. The sanctuary on earth was a washing, cleansing place for sin. In type, the sanctuary in heaven is the reality of the cleansing place for sin.
Okay.
So now, as a result, there has to be this high priest. But he cannot be just a transient high priest. He has to be permanent. And so we have the Savior, who is this permanent high priest. And then it tells us that the temple on earth served as a shadow, verse 5, who served unto the example and shadow of heavenly things. So the temple on earth is not the final reality. It is only a shadow of the true, which is in heaven. Verse 2 tells us that the true one is in heaven. So
does the Messiah say that the kingdom of heaven is within us?
Yeah. We're talking, yes, that's a different concept altogether. We're talking about the tabernacle where he's dwelling and ministering as the high priest. Just as there was an altar of, or the seven-lamp candlestick, for example, the showbread and such, that represented heavenly realities. The altar of incense and such, these things represent heavenly realities. The earthly one was to give us an example, a type, a shadow, an illustration of what will go on in heaven.
Okay.
So it's more than Christian.
I would look at that. I would look at that vice versa. I would look at that like the earth was to replicate that which was in heaven. We have the responsibility to carry out the functionality of that which is already established in the kingdom of heaven, which is truly transcendent. But our responsibility, being the kingdom within us, is to bring that presence forth here on earth. We are to make Yah's presence known here on earth, because it's already established in heaven. So our responsibility is to now bring that presence down through our obedience to Torah and in his son, in Mashiach. So this will become the reality. This will be the new earth, which will be the new heaven as well. And see, this is what we have to understand. As Jerusalem goes, the world is to go. And so once Jerusalem is established as the kingdom of heaven, then all the earth will be restored and brought to one. And this is a very principle that is through and through understood from Adam to pretty much Mashiach himself. They call it tikkun olam, repairing the ages. We have to repair the age and get rid of sin. This is what Daniel 9 is alluding to
Michael,
to fill up
Michael,
sin and unrighteousness.
We agree with that. We agree that we have to get rid of sin. We agree with the righteousness. We agree that earth is our final resting home. We agree that Matthew 5:5, the meek shall inherit the earth. We understand that. What we don't agree with is that you're saying there is never a trip to heaven for the people of God. That's where we disagree. So when we look at John 14:2 and 3, Garrett, can you read that, please? Because I'll have to take my phone off the phone to be able to read that.
Okay, so John 14:2 and 3. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also.
So we've understood your passion about the restoration of the kingdom on earth, and we agree with that. I think that you are denying that there are obvious references to Christ and the saints being and going to the realm of the Father.
Let me ask you verse 4. Just read verse 4 real quick.
Go ahead, please.
And whither I go, ye know, and the way ye know.
So, I mean, just qualify that for me. Just qualify what he's saying right there in verse 4. All that with 2, 3, and 4.
Where I'm going, you know, and the way you know, because you know me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. You know me, and you know where I'm going, to the Father. I'm going up there to prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come back and get you and take you there.
See, I see this in a whole different light, though. Now, we know, yes, Mashiach has ascended, but we also know that Mashiach, the Father's house, is referring to what the people know. He's speaking to them in the terms that are clear.
Jerusalem?
Okay? He's speaking to them in terms that are clear to them at this particular time, as relates to the temple. Okay?
So that was
you know that is the Jerusalem temple.
Okay.
I'm wrapping up, Mr. I'll be done a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go for another 5-6 minutes.
And I would really have to meditate and pray on this some more, because what I see almost like a rapture theory, almost. You know what I'm saying? Yep. In that it alludes to a great taking away from something that is an avoidance, as opposed to having to restore. You see what I'm saying? The restoration is the entire goal and the entire purpose of us being here in Mashiach now. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
And
yes.
when we go to that particular matter, it's like an avoidance of something that we have created now that we have to restore. And even to the degree, I had to think about what you're saying as far as the Sabbath, that this 1,000-year Sabbath, when the year of release came, and even the Jubilee year of release came, did they vacate the land when the Jubilee Sabbath came? Did they completely vacate the land, or were they still involved?
They couldn't.
They couldn't.
No, but they what they did was to not cause the land to work.
They let the land fallow. They let the land rest, because they had prepared themselves to encounter a year of release. Okay?
So
you're
missing
they had completely disappeared. You see what I'm saying? And it had completely gone to another dimension.
What you miss is that what you miss is that there's a forced Sabbath because of sin on the land and on the earth.
Where's that from?
Well, all of the people that possessed the land of Canaan, they were forced. Why were they forced off of the land? Sin. Why was Israel forced out of the land?
Sin. So
then, consider the sin across the whole entire earth, and then you'll begin to understand why the earth is going to receive her rest. Now, there's one other point here. When we can clarify where Christ went. Let's look in Acts chapter 1. I guess it's 4, 5, and 6. Can someone read that, please?
Okay. Which part? Is it when he was on the Mount of Olives? The part. Is that the part? Okay, so it's going to be further down. So let's start verse 9 to 11. And when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up, and the cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven, as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into the heaven? The same Yeshua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven.
So, do you think he went to a local place here on earth where they were familiar with where he would go there?
Mashiach ascended to his Father from where he came. Okay.
Okay.
I don't deny that. I do not.
So did he
deny the Mashiach's transcension and his ascendance to the kingdom?
So where are those mansions, or where are those rooms in his Father's house? If he ascended there and he said, I'm going there and I'm going to prepare a place for you, where are those places?
He's going to restore that which has been intended and initially established on earth.
No,
okay,
no,
so
Michael. You said he went to heaven. He went to where the Father is.
Exactly.
He said that where I am, you may be also. What did he mean by that? They were going to be in the place that he is.
Well, here's the question: if that's the case, why is he returning? Well, is he returning to take them away now? Is he returning to take them away, or is he returning to set up the kingdom? Because when we read Daniel, if you read Daniel, it talks about these thrones not being in heaven. These thrones are on earth. You see what I'm saying? When you read Daniel, this is the kingdom that comes after all these other kingdoms, these four kingdoms. What Daniel is talking about is establishing a kingdom on earth that will never be taken away. He's not talking about a kingdom in heaven.
Okay, I see. This is going to be your testing ground. I know you need to go to your family, and I don't want to take you away from that, and we need to do that too. So I think this is a good point, though, a good transition point for us to get back and look in that fourth kingdom, because it's going to bring out the Antioch Epiphanies component that you had mentioned, and that's what I was hoping that we'd gather. As when we take the body of knowledge that is available in the book of Daniel, you'll see that the work of the little horn power is under the kingdom of Rome and not the kingdom of Greece. And we're going to try to bring that out from the Bible in a very clear way. So we don't have the space right now to deal with that, but that will start helping our understanding, and that's why I said that really is a beautiful part. And we spend a little time, on the surface, which was important because it gives us time for pause and consideration. But going into the fourth kingdom, that's where the action is taking place. And we're going to see a sanctuary brought up there. And we want to know, when is this event taking place? The sanctuary was never destroyed under the Grecian Empire. It was desecrated by the Greeks. But the Greeks never destroyed the temple. There's no historical or biblical support for that. So, but we have come to the using up of our time here. So I know we're
get into more depth, because I think this is a good pause too.
Yeah,
man. And
so.
we definitely have to extract some things, and I think there may be some blind spots without the Maccabees really brought into consideration, because the time frame which even you speak of Rome coming in around 31, maybe a little bit earlier even, is not inclusive of Antiochus. Antiochus perceived that, and so this is still a continuum of the Grecian Empire. But let's look at definitely expanding this concept a little more.
Right. I think that's a good point. All right, well, let's close. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the time we've spent, and we are grappling with deep things of your word, and we ask that you help us to be faithful and true, and give us the wisdom from on high to understand your word, not based on church dogma or tradition, but by the revelation of the Holy Spirit. So we invite your presence in our meeting from time to time as we come, and even as we separate now one from another, and we meditate on these things, may you guide our understanding into all truth. Forgive our sins, we pray, and strengthen us to be faithful and true. Uphold us for your kingdom, and we thank you in the name of Yehoshua, our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen. Until next time, brethren, y'all have a good evening.
All right,
you
shalom,
too.
shalom. You have a good one.
Shalom.
All right. Shalom.
Thank you.